Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're going to be tackling a question that I know is on a lot of people's minds these days, and it's, can a robot take your job?
Interesting.
So we're diving into this 2015 research paper, and it was written by Frey and Osborne, and it's called "The Future of Employment: How Susceptible Are Jobs to Computerization?"
Right.
And they took a look at the U.S. job market, and tried to figure out, well, how many of these jobs are actually at risk of, being done by robots in the future?
Yeah.
And they came up with this pretty startling prediction. 47%
Wow.
of U.S. jobs are at high risk of automation. To help us break all of that down, we've got our expert here.
Yeah, it's funny to me that this paper is sparking so much conversation now because this whole idea of technology replacing jobs, well, it's not really new, is it?
No, not at all. I was reading about this guy, William Lee, and he invented this stocking frame knitting machine way back in the 1500s. And he thought this thing was going to revolutionize the whole industry. But you know what? He actually ended up having to flee the country.
What? Really?
Yeah, the guilds, the ones who controlled all the hand knitting. Well, they felt so threatened by this new machine.
I guess they thought it would put them out of business.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Hmm. That story just shows this tension that's always been there between, technology getting better and people worried about losing their jobs. But it's interesting how things changed during the Industrial Revolution. Like all these new technologies coming out, then, steam power and everything. Well, they actually made it so that jobs were easier for less skilled workers.
Because they simplified a lot of the tasks, right? I mean, made it so it was easier for anyone to run the machines.
Yeah. It was almost like technology was de-skilling the workforce back then.
Yeah.
And then, as we got into the 20th century, well, then technology started to actually need more skilled workers.
Right. Like, think about when we started using electricity and all these, more complicated systems that people had to manage.
Exactly, yeah.
So education suddenly became this really important thing. If you wanted to do well in this new world with all this technology, you had to have a good education.
Yeah, totally. So instead of technology like taking the place of skilled workers, it actually started to help them do their jobs even better.
Right, making them more productive and more valuable, which, makes me wonder, is that still going to be true in the 21st century? I mean, with
Yeah.
technology changing so faster than ever, is education really going to be enough to keep up?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's
Yeah.
it's a big part of what Frey and Osborne were trying to look at in this paper.
Right.
And so what they did was they looked at three main areas where robots are still not as good as humans.
Okay, so like what are these like robot weaknesses, that are keeping them from taking over all the jobs?
Well, there's perception and manipulation,
Right.
which is basically how well robots can see and move things around.
Yeah.
Then there's creative intelligence,
Mm.
and finally there's social intelligence.
Okay, that makes sense. So you're saying like robots are still pretty clunky, like
Yeah.
they can't really understand or react to things the way humans do?
Exactly. Yeah, they're just not there yet when it comes to those
I
things.
see. Got it. So that's what's stopping those robot overlords, at least for now.
For now.
But what's really cool is how they actually used all this, all these robot weaknesses, these bottlenecks to study hundreds of different jobs.
Sure.
I mean, they weren't just looking at how jobs are done today. They were thinking about, well, what if those jobs change? What if they get, restructured or simplified in the future?
Yeah, and that's what makes this research so interesting, right? They're not just taking a snapshot of how things are right now. They're actually trying to predict how work is going to change in the future.
Okay, so let's get into those predictions. I mean, what did they actually find?
Well, you remember that 47% of jobs that we talked about before.
Those that are at high risk, yeah.
Yeah, well, they predict that all that automation is probably going to happen in two ways.
Two waves. Okay, I definitely need to hear more about this. So what's the first wave going to look like?
Well, it's actually already starting to happen.
Mm.
The jobs that are being hit the hardest right now are in transportation, logistics, things like that, and also office and administrative support and production jobs.
So like truck drivers, data entry clerks, factory workers, those kind of jobs.
Yeah, exactly. Jobs that, involve a lot of routine tasks,
Hmm.
especially physical tasks.
Okay, so those are the jobs that are most at risk right now. But what about this second wave? I mean, what kind of jobs are we talking about then?
The second wave is going to be a little bit slower, and that's because it depends on, robots getting better at those things we talked about before.
Mm-hmm.
Perception and manipulation. So jobs that need a lot of dexterity and the ability to work in, complex environments, those are at medium risk right now.
So like plumbers and electricians and, mechanics, those kinds of jobs, they might be okay for now, but maybe not forever?
Yeah, it's like there's a timer ticking, but the thing is the pace of change with technology is so hard to predict.
Right.
But, what we can say with more certainty is that some jobs seem like they're going to be pretty safe from automation. At least that's what Frey and Osborne found.
Okay, now that's what I want to hear about. So tell me, what makes those jobs so safe? I mean, what is it about those jobs that the robots can't seem to crack?
Well, the jobs that seem to be the least likely to be automated, the ones that robots are going to have a hard time with, they kind of fall into two main groups. First, there are the jobs that need a lot of social intelligence.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So we're talking about jobs where you got to be good with people, right? Like understanding what they're thinking, what motivates them, how to, handle tricky situations.
Yeah, exactly. Those are all things that, it's really tough to teach a robot to do.
Right.
And then the second category is jobs that need specialized skills and a lot of creative intelligence.
So like scientists and engineers and artists,
Yeah.
people who are coming up with new ideas and pushing the boundaries, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it seems like on one hand, we've got these jobs where you got to be good at working with people.
Right.
And then on the other hand, we've got these jobs where you got to be the one coming up with the big ideas.
Yeah.
And those are the areas that seem like they're going to be the safest from the robots.
Yeah, that's right. And it really shows you just how important those uniquely human skills are,
Yeah.
Actually, Frey and Osborne, they found this really strong correlation between a job's automation probability, how likely it is to be automated,
Right.
and the education level and the wages that are associated with that job.
So what you're saying is the jobs that are most at risk are usually lower paying jobs that don't need as much education.
Exactly. Yeah.
We've been hearing a lot about this hollowing out of the middle class, how technology is kind of squeezing out those middle income jobs.
Right.
But this research suggests maybe something different is going on. I mean, what if instead of just hitting those middle income jobs, automation actually ends up having the biggest impact on low skill, low wage jobs?
That's one possibility.
Yeah.
And if that's how it plays out, well, that raises a whole bunch of other questions about how we get ready for that kind of shift in the labor market,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if these predictions are right, then we need to start thinking about how we educate and train people for these jobs of the future. Like, what are the skills that are going to be the most valuable when robots are doing more and more of the work?
That's the big question, isn't it? And the good news is that there are things we can do, both as individuals and as a society to adapt to these changes.
Okay, that's what I want to hear about. So what can people do to, kind of future-proof their careers? What advice would you give to someone who's worried about their job, being replaced by a robot?
Well, I think the first thing to remember is that this isn't about humans versus robots,
Yeah.
It's about figuring out how we can use technology to make a better future of work for everyone.
So it's not necessarily about trying to beat the robots, but about finding ways to work with them.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And that means really focusing on those human skills, the things that we're really good at and that are going to be really important going forward.
Like those social and creative intelligence skills that we talked about earlier?
Yeah. We need people who are great at communication, at solving problems, working together and thinking critically.
Right.
And those skills, well, you develop those through lifelong learning. It's about always being willing to learn and adapt to new challenges.
So it sounds like it's not just about what you know, but how you learn, how you adapt to new information.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
The world is changing faster than ever.
Yeah.
And it's only going to get faster. So the ability to learn and unlearn and then relearn, that's going to be essential.
This is where I think it's really interesting how the paper focuses on tasks, instead of just focusing on job titles.
Yeah, I agree. If we can figure out which specific tasks within a job are most likely to be automated,
Right.
then we can start thinking about, well, how do we train people for the other tasks, the ones that still need need those human skills.
So it's not necessarily about whole professions just disappearing. It's more about a shift in the types of tasks that people will be doing, like the example they gave with lawyers and paralegals.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Some paralegal tasks,
Yeah.
things like document review, those might get automated.
Right.
But lawyers, well, they're still going to be needed to analyze information, to come up with strategies, and to work with clients.
Mm-hmm.
It's about focusing on those higher level tasks
Mm-hmm.
that really need human judgment and expertise.
This has really given me a lot to think about. It can be a little daunting, thinking about how much things could change, but it's also exciting to think about the possibilities, what technology can do for us.
I think that's a great way to look at it. It's not about being afraid of the future. It's about understanding it and getting ready for it.
Yeah,
And knowledge is power, right?
absolutely. And speaking of knowledge, what are some concrete steps that people can take, to start preparing for this future of work? Where should they even begin?
Well, it can feel kind of overwhelming, right?
Yeah.
Trying to get ready for a future that feels so up in the air.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of people are feeling that way right now. Like where do you even begin?
Right. So I think, a good starting point is just take a look at the skills you already have.
Okay.
What are you good at? What do you enjoy doing? And then, once you have a good handle on that, try to think about how those skills could be used in different ways, maybe even in fields that are just starting up or changing really fast.
So it's about being proactive, not just waiting for things to happen, but really thinking ahead about where you want your career to go.
Yeah, exactly. That whole idea of, staying in the same job for your whole life, well, that's pretty much gone.
Right.
Being able to adapt and learn new skills all the time, that's what's important now.
Okay. So that makes sense. But how do people actually, do that? Are we talking about going back to school, taking courses online, or is it something completely different?
Well, it could be all of those things.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much out there now.
Yeah.
You've got traditional degrees, online learning platforms, boot camps, workshops, even just reading books and articles.
Right.
I think the key is to, figure out what kind of learner you are and then find what works best for you.
Yeah. I think some people might think that all this upskilling and reskilling, they might think it's got to take a ton of time and cost a lot of money.
Yeah, I can see that. And there are definitely programs out there like that.
Yeah.
But there are also a lot of free or low-cost options too.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you can only dedicate a little bit of time, it can still make a big difference. Maybe it's, just an hour a week reading up on something new.
Right.
Or taking an online course during your lunch break, that kind of thing.
It really sounds like the most important thing is just changing your mindset, making lifelong learning part of your routine.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's not just about learning new technical skills. It's also about those soft skills that we were talking about before,
Right.
like communication, problem solving.
Yeah.
Working well with others, thinking critically.
Right.
Those are the things that are going to make you stand out, especially as robots start taking over more of those routine tasks.
That's a really good point. And I think it's important to remember too that this isn't just, an individual thing. Employers and policymakers, they have a role to play in all of this as well. I mean, they need to be supporting workers as we go through these changes, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We need to, build systems that make sure workers have access to training and education opportunities.
Right.
And support when they're, moving from one job to another. We need to think about things like portable benefits and lifelong learning accounts, things that can really help people navigate all this change.
So it's not just about learning new skills. It's about changing the whole way we think about work, how we value different types of skills and contributions.
Yeah, exactly. I think we're moving into a whole new era of work, and we've got to change our systems and how we think to make sure they fit this new reality.
This has really been an amazing deep dive. I've learned a lot, and I hope everyone listening has too. We've covered so much ground from the history of how technology has, disrupted things to what automation might mean for the future of work.
Yeah.
But instead of ending on a scary note or leaving everyone feeling uncertain, I wanted to end on a note of, empowerment.
I love that.
Knowledge really is power, and the more we understand these trends, well, the better we'll be able to deal with them.
Right.
We can't predict the future, but we can get ready for it. And by embracing this idea of lifelong learning, and developing those really human skills that we talked about, and pushing for systems that support workers, well, we can create a future of work that's good for everyone.
I totally agree. And for everyone listening, I'd really encourage you to check out the appendix of the Frey and Osborne paper.
Yeah.
They actually list the automation probabilities for hundreds of different jobs.
Yeah.
You might be surprised by what you find.
We'll definitely include a link to that in the show notes. And be sure to tune in next time because we're going to be diving into some specific tools and resources that you can use to start future-proofing your career, starting right now.
That's right. Until then, keep those brains buzzing, everyone.